Welcome to the Famsville Pod, a platform where we discuss legal issues as it relates to the society. I hope you enjoyed the last episode, and if you have not watched it, please do. My name is Esther Rando. I remain your host for this episode. In this episode, we will be discussing the legal toolkit for businesses. And with me is Tammy. Tammy, please introduce yourself to the house.
Hi everyone, I'm Temilulu Adosumu. I'm a senior associate and team lead at Famsville. I'm a business lawyer and I'm also an ex-banker. I've been advising businesses for about a decade now, helping businesses set up in Nigeria, other parts of Africa, and global businesses essentially. I've had cause to help businesses start up, help them stay afloat, and also help them expand, both in Nigeria and other parts of the world. I've set up businesses in the UK, the Middle East, and also in Nigeria. So I work with a lot of businesses in terms of the area of law where I, practice corporate, commercial, labor and employment, everything that relates to business and helping businesses grow and stay afloat.
Thank you so much, Timmy. Nice having you on this episode, and we hope you have an educating and enlightening time with you.
Thank you.
So I came across a colleague of mine yesterday, and one of the challenges we observed, that one of the challenges most youths face now is they don't know what is required in terms of setting up a business legally. And a lot of people eventually set up businesses and find out that they are not compliant with what the law says. So, and that's why we have organized this episode for you to enlighten us about that. So, what are the type of companies available for an individual that wants to set up a business in Nigeria? And then, are there any peculiarities as to the type of company you must set up in a particular situation?
All right. Thank you very much. I think that was particularly a very insightful question. Yes, in my experience, I've had lots of people who are often confused, particularly young people in the country. In Nigeria, Nigeria is a country where you have limitless potentials, ideas brimming all over the place, but there is that problem of knowing the appropriate vehicle or structure to set up your business under. So you see people start up businesses under the wrong corporate structure, as it were. So when it comes to raising funds, writing proposals and getting all sorts of help where necessary for the business, it becomes a problem. So I think the first thing when it comes to, before you even delve into the issue of what kind of companies, to first ensure that you engage a sound lawyer, a business lawyer. I think that's the first step, right? I think it's important that you have a lawyer who understands not just the law, but the business of it, right? So you're able to have two in one. Somebody who understands what kind of business you want to do, who has been in the business space. Then the person will be able to advise on the appropriate legal structure for that. In a nutshell, answering the question proper now. So we have, companies limited by shares. You have companies limited by guarantee. Then you also have unlimited companies. But usually the ones you find, people, especially if you want to do business and also for the purpose of attracting the right kind of incentives when it comes to tax, and also meeting up with, some other requirements too of, regulatory bodies. The common type is the company limited by shares. So what you have in this kind of setup is where thanks to the newcomer now, so you could be the sole owner of the business, right? You are the only director, only shareholder. So we have one director companies now that has been made possible. So basically all the shares are allotted to you. And so what a company limited by shares, what it's all about is that the liability is not personal. Like the fact that you are the only director, it's not the risk of the business is not to you as a person. The risk is tied to the amount of shares that are allotted to you in the company. So that's like the popular type of business structure. That's the company limited by shares. So you also have company limited by guarantee. Usually these kind of structures they operate where you want to advance a particular course, like education, like arts and all of that. So you have a company limited by guarantee. So basically, so companies limited by guarantee, they have their own peculiarities, right? While company limited by shares, they also have their own peculiarities. They also have a rarely used variant. That's the unlimited, companies. We have a few of them in Nigeria. So those are like unlimited companies, but the popular ones are what you find as the company limited by shares. And as we go on in the interview, hopefully I'll be able to touch on some of the distinguishing, features perhaps of some of these entities.
Okay, thank you so much, Timmy. So my question now is, so in an instance where you don't have a company that is registered, is it possible to enter into a contractual relationship with someone? So let me be very clear. So I want to set up a company, right? And I want to raise funds, but I don't have a company name per se. So can I enter into, and I don't want to enter in my personal capacity. So is there a way I can enter into a contract, and then maybe when I register that company, my company now pays back? Is there something like a framework that applies?
Well, I think that's also an instructive question that people listening and viewing us also would find interesting, right? So of course, I believe that the law should not be an obstacle to businesses, right? Rather what the law should do is the law should serve as an instrument of advancing commercial purposes, right? So we've had entrepreneurs, we've had businesses, we've had HNWIs, that is high net worth individuals, approach us with some of these questions similar to what you have asked, and we've been able to, in the course of our experience as a firm, we've been able to devise innovative solutions to assist in granting such requests, as it were. So what you have in that kind of scenario, I want to do business but readily I'm not able to incorporate, whether due to lack of funds or I'm not even interested and all of that. So what you can do, for example, is to so we'll help you and we'll assist you in coming up with what we call pre-incorporation agreements, for example. So you can have a pre-incorporation agreement. Let's say there are a number of founders, for example, or a number of directing minds of the business, and you don't want that strict legal structure of XXX Limited or whatever. So we can have pre-incorporation agreements basically that tie them together contractually, right? It's basically private, because some of them even want to be confidential, right? They don't want their names, their addresses and all those personal details. Now we're in the age of data privacy now, right? So some of them don't even want their details lying at the CAC registry where anyone can just pick them up and do whatever they like with them. So what we do is that we devise a private structure, a private structure, we call it a pre-incorporation agreement or a pre-incorporation contract. So with that, the objects of the business are spelled out, the profits, like every kind of obligation and counter obligation between the founders, and whatever they want to do, they do that. In fact, with that, they could even acquire assets, probably buy an office building, lease out a space and all of that. Then probably once they are ready, if they intend to, in some instances we also use shareholders agreements. In such instances, what we now do is that probably when the company is ready to acquire the right legal framework, the company can then now ratify that pre-incorporation contract and then inherit all the assets and liabilities and what have you. So yes, I agree. I very much agree with you that not incorporating a company immediately. There are some other innovative solutions like what I just mentioned. There are a number of them that we can devise for you as a business owner. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, you actually did.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, but now when we go into issue of partnership, because right now the economy is not smiling at anyone. Then setting up a business alone can be a bit taxing and demanding. So it's very common to see people come together to set up a business or a company, as the case may be. So what are the things that you advise youths or any individual that wants to go into partnership with people? What are the things the person should look out for, like pointers, in terms of entering into a partnership?
So wow, interesting. Interesting because I would say that there have been a number of queries come our way as lawyers, as business lawyers who advise on transactions of this nature, right? So when people come together and say, we don't just, because lawyers, we are like doctors, or maybe let me say doctors are like lawyers, right? So when a patient, which is in this case your client, comes to you and they say, can you give me a tetanus shot, or I want some, pain, relievers and all of that. You don't just administer that, right? I don't just set up a partnership for you without knowing why do you want to set up a partnership. So I need to look at the kind of business model you're adopting. I mean, your kind of business, does it allow, for example, you can't say you want to go into, imports and exports, for example, like on a very large scale, or you want to trade, shares on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and you'll be asking for a partnership. I mean, in terms of the requirements from the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the Securities and Exchange Commission, you would have a problem. When you're trying to import, when you're trying to export, for example, if that's what your business is focused on, you will have a problem, because most times what they want to see is a company limited by shares that has a particular capital requirement in terms of authorized share capital. So we're already thinking ahead. I mean, I could sit down and think of a business like 20 years down the line. I want to ensure that you are able to expand when the time is right. You are able to diversify when the time is right. So I don't just prescribe pain relievers or tell you, oh, you want a partnership, this is the agreement. No, we don't do that as business lawyers, right? Because we are not just business lawyers. We are business, people. We are business partners, right? So we try and look into what you are trying to achieve. And in most cases where a partnership won't work, we will let you know, and we'll advise you on the appropriate structure. Where a partnership will work, we'll advise you on the structure. So in terms of answering your question properly, I just had to lay that foundation for the benefit of some other people who might not have that foundation, right? So what we do in such instances is that, I mean, thankfully Kama now provides for a formal partnership structure. You call that limited liability partnerships, like the LLPs. So they are like partnerships, but they enjoy the advantages that regular companies limited by shares also enjoy. Or we just go the traditional way. You have your deed of partnership, your partnership deed, where your objects as a business will be spelled out, profit sharing will be spelled out, liability, I mean a whole lot of obligations, requirements, prescriptions that ties that tie everyone together. It will all be stated in the partnership deed. But we'll also be advising them in terms of liability, because one partner can put everyone in trouble, right? The issues of liability. So we'll advise you then, like I said before, will your business be the line of business you are pursuing, or the business you want to carry out, is it advisable to run it under a partnership structure? So a whole lot of factors come into play, right? So either we use the traditional structure of having a deed of partnership and all of that, or we make it a bit more formal or corporate by using the limited liability partnership structure, that is the LLP, where you'll be able to have some sort of limitation of your liability, as it were, and there's also like a governmental recognition of that at the Corporate Affairs Commission. And also all of these things have their tax implications, aside the regulator in whatever space you are playing in not allowing a kind of structure. There's also that requirement of you paying tax in some instance, or you being exempt from some kinds of tax also, right? So we look at a lot of factors before we come to that decision, but I just said that so you could have an understanding of how we think, so that we can sleep comfortably knowing that we've advised a client properly.
Wow,
thank you.
That's really good. So thank you for sharing your knowledge with us so far. That's actually been interesting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. So now we have talked about the types of complaints and then the issue of partnership, but then we need to talk about how to raise funds for businesses, because this is very important. We can actually have an idea of, okay, this is the type of company I want to set up, but you don't have the funds to be able to do that. So are there ways that startups can get funds to be able to push their business far?
Okay. So again, like I said, in the course of our experience as a law firm, that's Famsville, we've had similar questions also. People want to raise money. I mean, why are you in business anyway if not for money? Right? You're either willing to, I mean, nobody gets into a business and doesn't want to make money.
True.
So the primary motive is to advance your commercial interest, to maximize profits, right, and to minimize your risk. So some people use their money to run their business. I mean, that's fine, right? But some they start with their own money, gather from family and friends and all of that. So you also need a business lawyer who understands, that's, the nitty-gritty, right? The intricacies of, raising capital or fund or getting a fundraise. So depending on the kind of sector you are playing in, it would also determine, who will advise you to raise funds with. Because some, a number of bodies only give or only give funds or grant, facilities to certain sectors or certain kind of businesses. If a tech startup comes to me today, I wouldn't ask them to go to central bank. You know why? The central bank would not assist a startup by giving, because they even feel that startups are, making incursions into, the profits. They are invading the, profit margins of the banks. And what makes the Central Bank of Nigeria, is because it has banks under its control, and there's that war, silent war or a cold war between banks and FIT. So it's a no-brainer, right? So as a business lawyer, an experienced one, over time, I would be able to advise you on where to look for funds, help you look at, okay, what's even the what are the terms surrounding, the funds you are trying to access. Is this particular lender, or equity entity, are they business friendly? What is like their reputation? Do they have a pedigree in the market? Are they just people who dump money on you and come back, and probably not allow you, move forward again in your business, or there's just something off, about them. So we'll be able to advise basically on that. So if you come to me as, a tech startup, for example, I would be advising you to probably look the way of, Y Combinator, right, and some other, entities who are like, they help you grow. They call them incubators, accelerators. So usually you would get the right support as a tech entity. A lot of, millions of, dollars were actually raised by Nigerian tech startups, since 2020 till date, like a whole lot of money. And they are not likely to access those funds, using the traditional, modes of, approaching banks and, CBN and all of that. So that's for tech. So in terms of, mainstream, businesses, which if you ask me, even the informal sector, right, in terms of mainstream businesses and even the informal sector, they also have particular institutions, we also advise and guide them through the entire phase. That's why I said you need to have a business lawyer who will be with you from morning till night, right? So for mainstream businesses, so what we do is that we look at the sector in which you want to operate in. If, for example, you want to do something in agriculture, for example, and you are not a tech entity, so we'll be looking at places like Bank of Industry, and then also this NESA microfinance bank, Nigerian investment based risk sharing, agricultural lending bank, right? So what they do is that they are focused on agriculture. Yes. So you are likely to attract, their attention, get, lower interest rates, get approvals on time, because they are set up just for that purpose. These are things that, people don't know, right? Even if they know, they don't even have the confidence, they don't even know the documents, they have nothing. So that's where business lawyers, basically, come in, right? So we'll be able to advise you to that extent. Is it manufacturing? We know where to go to, right? So in terms of, raising funds, and also let me also mention this, you also need, to be able to determine how profitable it is in the long run. We'll advise you to borrow, right? Whether what is necessary for you at, as a business at that point in time of your evolution as a business, is it debt or equity? Equity in the sense that someone is buying shares in your company and they are giving you money. Debt in the sense that you are being you're going to borrow, and then there will be interest rates. So based on where your company is in the life cycle of a business generally, with our experience, we would also be able to advise you, right? We'll look at things like how well you are able to utilize. It's not just about raising money. A lot of startups these days, they raise money they don't even need. Some of them keep it in the banks, and probably you even keep it in a Naira account, for example, and the Naira goes down and you borrowed in dollars.
Wow.
So those are things that make businesses pack up early, right? And they say that the first 5 years or so of a business, they're like the toughest years. It's just like marriage.
Right.
So those are things that we factor in, and we'll be able to advise you. Oh, don't collect money here. We know this particular investor, we know this particular institution, they are not business friendly. Don't do business with them. So you get that value added advantage when you're having someone who has a lot of experience around helping businesses, basically. I don't know if I've answered your question.
You have really given us a how will I say it now, more than we have asked for.
Thank you.
So now another aspect
Okay.
of business is issue of taxation. Now
People don't like paying taxes.
you have to pay tax. It's all of our duty. But as a business startup, you can rarely even survive. And then you have either the FIRS or the Lagos State Revenue Service pushing you for money that you have not even generated. Do you understand? So how do we help business startup with issue of tax?
Oh, okay. Another interesting question. I mean, anyone who is familiar with taxation knows that apart from debt, it is said in tax circles that the only other thing that is certain apart from debt is actually taxes. So whoever you are, whatever kind of business you do, you need to pay tax. So of course we help you pay tax, right? But because of experience and because we have a very robust tax practice also as a firm, we are able to analyze, we are able to advise you on. So while we are setting up your business structure at the inception of you engaging us, we are already looking at the tax implications. So we are I mean, visionaries, if you ask me. We are not just lawyers, we are visionaries for businesses, right? So we are looking at your tax exposure, tax liabilities at the time we are even advising you, onboarding you as a client, right? So depending on the sector in which you operate, I mean, for example, most companies have to pay company income tax, and all of that. You have to remit all of those taxes, right, as a company. So if, for example, you are not incorporated as a company, you will not be liable to pay the company's income tax. That's important to note, right? So depending on your sector also. So for example, let's say we set up a new company today. So there are like tax exemptions for newly incorporated companies. It's up to about 18 months or so. If it's a new company, you have that holiday period for like 18 months. Then also, what a number of business people are also not aware of is that there is also what we call a pioneer certificate. So it's like a pioneer status. So because government wants to help businesses stay afloat, help a lot of so that the economy can run, so that at the end of the day Nigeria is generating a whole lot of gross domestic product, which is GDP. So there are a number of tax incentives in Nigeria to ensure that businesses are running and they stay afloat, right? So that's where all these incentives come to play. So for most companies, for companies operating in most of the sectors you have in the economy, they have that pioneer. It's like a holiday for about 3 years. Once you have that pioneer certificate, you will not be liable to pay tax. That's important to note, right? Then also depending on your sector, for example, so for exports, so if for example you are exporting products out of Nigeria, there are also incentives for you as long as those funds are repatriated back 100% into the country.
Wow.
So I think that's something interesting also for those who are interested in export. So for gas utilization also, there are a number of tax incentives too for them. Perhaps some businesses, like you have various export processing zones. If your business is located within an export processing zone, a free zone, and all of those things, they have taxes so that they can grow, right, and they can maximize profit. So government allows such businesses run with a number of tax incentives as it were. So from the time we are helping you set up your structure, advising you based on the nature of your business, we already have your tax liability in mind. So we won't help you evade tax, right? But we can help you. Some people have called that tax avoidance, not tax evasion. Tax evasion is criminal, but tax avoidance, we can help you structure and minimize your liabilities within the confines of the law.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Thank you very much.
So now there's also an issue where you have ideas,
Yeah.
and you share it with people, and then you notice that your ideas are now becoming other people's ideas.
Yeah.
And then there's really no way for you to enforce it, or to, and they make money from your ideas, you know, because you always pursue things that generates money. So when you share your ideas with people, and then they make use of your ideas and generate money using your own ideas, so how do you protect your ideas, especially for a startup? It's very common for individuals to have ideas but may not necessarily have the funds, like I said earlier, to pursue it, but they share it with other people. Other people now make use of those ideas, and then they are not compensated in any way. So how do you protect your ideas?
That's a very
How do you protect your ideas?
a very interesting question.
Yeah.
Now, like they say, ideas rule the world. So and you have to take into account Nigeria's population. I mean, more than half of our population as a country, I mean, comprises, you know, young people. So one thing about, you know, young people is the ability to, you know, run with a lot of ideas. You know, and, you know, for me, I've seen that, you know, as a country, we are running, you know, below potential in terms of the kind of ideas we have. You know, look at creatives, for example, the entertainment industry. There's a whole lot of untapped potential around that. You know, look at the, you know, spare parts, you know, dealers, that informal sector. There's a whole lot of potential, you know, lying there everywhere. Basically, Nigeria is just like a sea of ideas. But in terms of now ensuring that, you know, these ideas are well protected and all of that, and then also monetized appropriately. If it's not protected, it's likely not to be monetized. So there's like a gap, there's like a leak in terms of the revenue that should accrue to the individual and also accrue to the country, right? When you are paying your tax, when you are employing people, salaries are paid, and everybody is happy, really. So I mean, it's a very interesting question. Now, in terms of, you know, ideas, what do you call an idea? I think that's the starting point. What do you, I mean,
what's an idea?
What's an idea? Right? You know, I've had cases of, you know, as a lawyer, you know, as a firm, we've had cases of, you know, people walking up to us and saying, oh, this person stole my idea and all of that. At the end of the day, sometimes we sit down, we look at it and we say, what you've even come to say is not even an idea. Like, my dog even has this idea, right? It doesn't even qualify to be, you know, an idea, you know. And in some other instances where we determine, I don't know if I'm answering your question, please. You know, in some other instances where we're able to see that, oh, this idea is actually, you know, unique enough, right? You know, you didn't take steps to protect your idea. And the other person who supposedly stole the idea took steps to protect it. Who does the law protect? You know, so those are issues that we've had to deal with. So in Nigeria today, I mean, as a business lawyer, I can tell you that the law has been set in place to protect, you know, ideas, basically to protect innovation. You have patents, you have copyrights, you have trademarks. All of those provisions of the law, or different, you know, laws, they fuse to protect business people. So when you're talking about ideas, for example, you are looking at, you know, patents, for example, you are looking at innovation, you are looking at patents, your marks as a business. Probably you have an S sign in your business. You should trademark. Is your idea. You know, probably, you know, is there, once everyone sees S, what they think of is maybe a lady. And you want them to associate thinking of a lady, or when a lady comes to mind, you want them to think of your brand, because you sell beauty creams and, you know, rose oil and all of those cosmetics that, you know, women use, or scrubs, right? So you use that S, and someone sees it, you know, the person likes the S, and the person checks, you didn't do anything about it, and they protect it. We've had such issues, right? So in terms of how to protect your ideas, you know, when you bring the idea forward to us, we look at it. One thing the law also requires is that your idea must not just be something generic, right? It has to be
something
everywhere. So things like that, we call them, you know, ideas in the public domain, like streets. those ideas on the streets, right? You can't claim it. There are some ideas you can't claim today in Nigeria because they are on the streets everywhere. They have become so notorious, right? So we look at the idea, we ensure that it's unique, right? You know, in some cases like patents, we ensure that you've even put some measure of sufficient effort or skill to ensure that that idea can be distinguished, right? Because those are things that, you know, we have to satisfy the law, so that someone else who doesn't even know about you and also has the same idea would not be prejudiced because you came before them. So you have to be able to show that, okay, I've improved, this is my own sufficient labor or skill
that you have put into that idea.
exactly.
But how do you quantify that?
Well,
is it possible?
I mean, it's possible, right? So there are cases, you know, in Nigerian, you know, IP law today where, you know, people have translated, you know, sermons, translated notes, you know, and the courts have held that that was sufficient. So it's a question of fact, really. It's not like the law states this is what you must have done. There must be that, you know, sufficiency. Like it's just it varies from one situation to another. Then also your idea, is this something that can be replicated by an industrial process? So anything that you cannot replicate by an industrial process is not something that is not an innovation that, you know, patents, for example, will protect. Right? You may not need that much requirements in terms of, you know, quantity of requirements you need to fulfill. Let's say, for example, you are looking at trademark. A trademark does not have that much difficulty in obtaining as much as patents, but still we have our different ways as lawyers in ensuring that we are able to get the right legal protection. Copyright also, copyright, you know, protecting literary works, musical works, artistic works. I'm sure creatives listening to me, they are gonna like this, right? I mean, I'm sure you've seen it all over the news. There's a particular, you know, musician, you know, trying to sue another musician for about 300 million naira, saying you used one part of my song and all that. So those are the issues, right? Was there copyright in terms of the, you know, artistic works in the question? If there was, you know, to what extent as an infringement occurred? So these are, you know, things that we can also look at. Also, as lawyers, in the event that you don't have that legal protection, which you should ordinarily have, as at the time we're helping you float your business, we've also devised ways of ensuring we are still able to protect you when maybe issues arise. For example, you can look at maybe passing off actions and some other, you know, ways of ensuring that your ideas are not just stolen unjustly. So, but when you you know, seek the right, you know, counsel, you would get all of this, basically.
Thank you so much, Timmy. I have actually, you know, you're really enlarged, or how will I say it now? You've really exposed me to certain areas that I've actually not looked at, and it was an interesting session. Hope you'll come back anytime soon.
I will.
You can't let you go.
I'm just a phone call away.
You know, time is not on our side. I hope we enjoyed ourselves and we're able to learn one or two things. If you have any questions or comments, you can always put them down in the comment section, or you can send your comments or questions to the email showing on your screen. We hope to see you again, and I remain your host, Esther Rando. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.